Hello guys, I am back and I'm going to give you yet another franchise ranking. Well, I'm technically redoing one I already did, except just not listing it on a post. This time, this franchise consists of 8 films. Well, actually 7, based off 7 books, but the final and 7th book was split into 2 movies. So, today I'm going to be ranking the all 8 Harry Potter films. And I am not including Fantastic Beasts because I refuse to watch those fanfic prequels. But anyways, let's get started, and once again, I'm going to be ranking them in chronological order. So there you go. To start things off, start with the first film that started it all, and that is none other than Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Now, this is probably my 4th favorite film in the series, as it basically what begun one of my biggest parts of my childhood, and also introduced us to one of the best characters in fantasy history, and that is none other than the title or protagonist himself, who grew up in an abusive home with these abusive relatives after his parents were killed by the series' antagonist, who shall not be named. Well, you know his name anyway, so I don't need to say it. But what started this off as, so far, it started a big 10-year journey and also had very likable and unforgettable characters, well done camera work, also stunning visual effects, also has brilliant character development, especially with the 3 protagonists, and also some really heartwarming moments as well, and also we have I forget what I'm going to say, but anyways, you get my point, and also is very faithful to the source material of the books. This was pretty much the film that, along with Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring, revived the fantasy genre, as it was kind of started to fail around the 90s, and people were losing hope in a lot of Hollywood films, as they were all dying out. In short, it's a perfect film, and I would respectfully give this an 8.5 out of 10. It's a perfect start to the franchise, and it's also a well-worthy watch. Sure, it's a little long, but these are meant to be faithful to the books, so of course they're going to be long. Anyways, now we have, eventually a year after this movie, we got the second installment of the series, and that was none other than Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Now, this was a bad film, but it certainly wasn't as good as Philosophers. Now, don't get me wrong, it was still a good film. It's still extremely faithful to the book. Also, has some very unforgivable moments, like the infamous scene where they fly in the car. I mean, Harry and Ron have to fly in the car because the train was blocked off. And still also has somewhat humor, despite being a little bit darker, and even has another even good plot twist, and we get to know more about the franchise antagonist of the series. But, however, the film's problems was that it felt way too long, and a lot of scenes just felt like they dragged on, mostly the Slytherin scenes. I would skip through a lot of the scenes with Slytherin because they were just kind of wouldn't end, and they just kind of dragged on, and it got a little boring every once after a few while, so yeah. It was still a good film nonetheless, but it's not as fun as Philosopher's Stone. So, I will respectfully give this film a 7.5 out of 10. Sure, still not as good as the first one, but it's still a pretty good sequel nonetheless. But then, we finally got what is my favorite film in the franchise, and that is none other than Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. This was pretty much where the franchise started to get really good and actually started to get a little bit dark. Alright. And also, one of the rare times where the 3rd installment is not the worst. Since mostly the 3rd installments always kill the franchise or just really suck. But this was among one of the few rare exceptions. What happened in this film was pretty much where we have the Dementors, who are very well-written villains, and also some really good acting performances, especially with newcomers such as Gary Oldman. Also, also we get to know more about Harry's father during the school years, and a great plot twist involving time travel. And this was probably one of the few times where time travel was actually done right, around the very end of the movie. And also we get introduced to Professor Lupin. Now, are there a few problems? Well, yes. Well, technically, we don't really see much of Voldemort in this film. That was just kind of the only problem. And also, sure, fans weren't too happy about Richard Harris kind of being replaced. Well, but keep in mind, he kind of died before this film could get made, so, but Michael Gambon was still pretty good in the role. He was still perfect, phenomenal, and I also still good for the rest of the films. For this film, I would respectfully give it a 10 out of 10. It's easily the best film in the whole series, and easily just a very fun watch, and a very good way to start off the more darker routes of the series. But then, we probably went and we got the most darkest film in the whole franchise, and yeah guys, this to me is the darkest one, because while the rest ones that came after this were dark, they weren't nearly as like near R-rated as this one, and that was none other than Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Ooh, man. Yeah, this is where things just got down. This is where just things got really intense. If you thought the third one was dark, this one is just the darkest. It was also easily one of the darkest films I ever saw as a kid, because it basically dealt with the return of a very deadly foe that we never wanted to see come back. Also, which is also the best part of the film, because here we finally see the real appearance of Lord Voldemort, who finally appears in person for the first time, as in the first film, because he just appeared as a head, and in the second movie he was just a younger memory. This time, no, he's really here. Actually here. And it's pretty much a big downer note. It's a good way to end the film on a more downer note than the other three films, because now it basically sets up the next films we're about to get. Also, if you follow the book closely, and it still had great acting and some really intense action, and especially easily one of the saddest deaths in the franchise, and that was Cedric Diggory, who actually had a really good performance from Robert Pattinson. Now, there are a few downer moments, big flaws that I can agree with some fans, especially the angry Dumbledore scene. Oh God, don't even get me started on that. That is just absolutely the cringiest moment in the franchise. Also the haircuts. Like, why didn't they just get haircuts before going to school? Seriously. That's why pretty much everyone likes to call it the bad haircuts film. The one where they don't have haircuts and their hair is very long, but there's nothing wrong with that, guys. As for my ranking of the film, I'd say it's easily my second favorite film in the franchise, and I will respectfully give it a 9 out of 10. It's not as good as Prisoner of Azkaban, but it's not as, the worst, like fans are saying, and I'm about to get to the worst, guys, because